Hey guys, and welcome back to the Kai Paul podcast. We are honored today to have Chelsea Zimmerman with us. She is a mom, an influencer, a realtor, and it is so cool to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Kai.
Absolutely. Well, you have been a person that has inspired me over and over again, and I just love your vibe. I love the energy that you bring. And so, tell us a little bit about yourself in a snapshot.
Totally. Well, I am a mom. I am bio mom to two boys, and I have a bonus son. They're in their teens, so definitely a teen boy mom, which is definitely a bit of a challenge at times, but it's always a blessing. I'm married to the love of my life, Garrett. Him and I are actually a real estate team together out of the Red Deer area, Central Alberta. And I'm a big fashion buff, love fashion.
I can tell, rocking the camo.
I'm trying to keep up. Yeah.
Keeping it trendy.
Totally. Yeah. So, I love Jesus. We're very involved in our church, and that's about it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Super cool. Well, the reason I brought you on the show is a number of years ago, I was going through a really difficult season in my life, and we were actually shooting a promo video. And you were one of the actors in this promo video. And afterwards, it was a super long day. I know we had been filming in downtown Calgary, and we were like to get all these scenes before the sunlight disappeared. And then we went out for supper, and just kind of naturally, you just somehow, as I was asking you some questions, brought up heartbreak, the concept of heartbreak, and how you had journeyed through that and how you had overcome that. And that inspired me so much. And so at that time, I made a mental note because I knew one day I was going to have a podcast, and here we are.
Yeah.
And so I brought you onto the show because I wanted to talk about that, overcoming heartbreak. And if you would just want to dive in a little bit into your story and share that.
Totally. Yeah. So it's funny. That day, I don't actually remember exactly what we were talking about or how it came up in conversation, but a little bit about my story. So I had kids when I was very young. So I actually had my first son when I was 18.
Wow.
And then I had my second son when I was 20.
Wow.
So they are 14 months apart. Mm-hmm. And going through obviously teen pregnancy was extremely challenging. And obviously not being with the right person. Mm-hmm. I was definitely in a very manipulative, abusive relationship with my children's dad. And so I ended up leaving him before my second son was actually born. And so my second son actually never had the opportunity to be around his dad, but it was for the best. And so I actually, when I left, I moved home with my parents, and in our teeny tiny small town of Plamondon, Alberta. Shout out to Plamondon.
Love the small towns.
Yeah, totally. And so, I moved back there, and I had these two little kids under 2 years old, and I was really broken.
Yeah. I
was extremely broken. And, I wanted to be the best mom I could be to my boys. So kind of backing up a little bit more, I am adopted. And so when I got pregnant with my first son, Caden, it was one of those things where I was like, there is absolutely no way I'm not having this baby. Even at a young age, I was like, no, my parents chose me, and my mom chose to carry me. She was only 15 when she got pregnant with me. And so when I had my boys, I was like, I am just going to do the absolute best that I can. Mm-hmm. And so thankfully my parents were very, very supportive, and they were my rocks during that time.
The importance of parents.
Totally. Yeah. And they really supported me through that season where I was living at home with them, and they just really bonded with my kids, and they obviously became grandparents a lot earlier than what we kind of were expecting to. But at the end of the day, when it comes to that season of my life, I was so broken, I couldn't even look people in the eye. I was so just beyond my confidence was sabotaged. I was just in this pattern of unhealthy behaviors and things like that. And so when I kind of started to make a turnaround was actually when I got a job. So I started to work at Service Credit Union when my oldest son was like probably 5 months old. And then I kept working there. And my job at that time was really what kept me going. It kept me getting out of bed every morning. It kept me, just wanting to continue to live at that point in my life. And so then actually my parents decided that they were going to make a move to Ontario.
Wow.
And so
that's a big move.
Huge.
Multiple provinces.
100%. And so they moved to Ontario, and I was actually, I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was.
So you weren't going with them?
I wasn't going with them.
Okay.
No. So because of the fact that I had to share custody of my boys, there was no way that I could have done that. I had to just
wow.
Yeah. So I ended up literally crying out to God and saying like, where do you want me to go? Because I don't know. I can't stay here. I'm not staying in this small town by myself with 2 little kids. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And that was the very first time that I actually audibly heard the voice of God.
No way.
And I was like, he told me to go to Red Deer. And I was like,
to Red Deer.
To Red Deer.
For those of you that don't know, Red Deer is like a small town in the middle of Alberta. It's like calling you to Red Deer.
Yep.
Okay.
I was called to Red Deer. And I said to God at that point in my life, I was like, God, if this is really you, I need 3 things. And I was like,
Dang.
I was very, very specific. I said, I need a job, I need a house, and I need childcare for my kids.
Yeah, nothing major.
Nothing major, right? Just those 3 things, just basic. Yeah. So.
Okay. Before you keep on, you heard the voice of God. Okay.
Yes.
I know most people are always like, oh, it'd be so nice if like God just spoke to me, right?
Yeah.
I need more details. I need more details on this.
So I don't think I had ever actually screamed that loud in my life, because when my parents came to me and said, we're selling the house that you grew up in, that you're now living in with your 2 children. We're selling this house and we're moving across the country. I was like, oh, okay. I don't know what this means for me, for my family, for my boys. And I was really angry. And so one night I was by myself at home. And I remember I was sitting in our basement, and I was sitting in my dad's like recliner chair that was probably like, I don't know, like 50 years old or something. I'm sitting in this recliner, and I was just like, God, what do you want me to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. And honestly, it was just like, go to Red Deer. Wow. Now, my kids' dad did live in Red Deer at the time. Okay. So I was like, why would I move closer to him? Like, why would I do that?
Valid question.
And I really felt like it was because, so my kids were having to travel back and forth. And it's about a 3-hour drive from where I'm from to Red Deer. Okay. And so they were having to travel. And I was just like, I cried out to God that day, and he was just like, do it for your kids. Wow. And I did. And thankfully, once I moved to Red Deer, they were able to stay out of the car as much. And yeah, it was just one of those things where it's a blessing in disguise when you get there. But then that led into the other part of my heartbreak that I can get to after. Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
okay, before we go on, you said something really interesting, and I was like, oh, I got to make a mental note to come back to this.
Yeah.
So as your boys are growing up, you were a young mom, you said something that really caught my attention, and you said that your parents, so their grandparents, were very involved in their lives. Is that true?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my oldest son actually, for the last 5 years, has actually been living with my mom and dad.
No way.
There is some backstory there too, but it is just one of those things where it truly does take a village to raise children, no matter what circumstance they come into the world in. And so, my parents have just been a huge support to me, and it's been great for all of us, for everybody involved. Yeah.
That's amazing. And the reason I mention that is because recently, actually very recently, I was listening to, I think it was a TED Talk or it was a mini doc, and it was talking about the rise of suicide in North America and how suicide is becoming more and more prevalent, and more teenagers are falling because of depression, because of stress, because of societal or family issues. They're falling into suicide. But the statistic that actually blew my mind was that kids or teenagers that have an authentic relationship with their grandparents, do you know what the percentage of suicide is amongst those teenagers?
Probably pretty low.
It's 0.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Polled tens of thousands of young people in North America, and the suicide rate was 0. Wow. And that blew my mind. I was like, the importance of grandparents and children is amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, to be honest with you, I had really great relationship with my grandparents. Wow. And, unfortunately, my grandma, my mom's mom, she passed away when I was 6 years old. And, but my dad's mom, like, she was just your like cute little Catholic grandma who loved baking and who just loved, and it was just the most amazing experience.
Shout out to all the grandmas.
Right.
Like,
shout
seriously.
out to the grandmas. 100%. They are just so special. Yeah, they really are.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going with your story. Yeah, it's amazing.
So yeah, I mean, okay. So I moved to Red Deer, and I was again going through this massive change in my life where I was just like, okay, like, so I got the job, got the childcare, got all of the things, everything lined up, moved to Red Deer. And then I got sideswiped by another relationship. And so I ended up kind of clinging to the first guy that gave me any type of attention, because up to that point I had really validated myself through men, and I had found my identity in men. Okay. And so if I didn't have a man, like, I didn't have a savior, I didn't have somebody to keep me going. Like, it was just this idea that I had in my head that I needed a man, that I needed that provider. Okay. I needed somebody. So I clung to the first guy that I kind of was, who paid any attention to me at that point in my life. Okay. I just was like, okay, like I
think that's a big pitfall, though, that a lot of women go through, right? It's like they look for validation through affection. So if they receive any sort of affection, they can fall into that trap.
Exactly. And that's just it. I mean, I'm in the process of doing a lot of identity work, and I'm taking a course called Freedom Session. And honestly, through this process, I've learned that has been a pattern in my life, where from a very young age, I didn't feel, I had an abandonment wound from being adopted. And so when I was trying to fill that and trying to get that, temporary validation, I did it through men and through, being with men and who I was with.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So I got in this relationship, and unfortunately it was also very toxic. And I was with the guy for 3 years. We were on and off again, and he never wanted anything to do with my kids, really. But they had gone on a 1 week on, 1 week off rotation with their dad. And so on the weeks that they were gone, I would have my boyfriend there. And then when they were home, I would be by myself with them. And so they never really got to know him at all. And it finally came to a head 3 years later. And it was actually crazy. So
3 years.
3 years we were together. Yeah. And at the end of our relationship, we actually broke up the weekend before my parents moved back to Alberta.
Okay. Wow. Plot twist.
Yeah. So we broke up the week before, and my mom and dad were scheduled to move back, and they actually ended up moving back to Red Deer.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So just the timing of how that all played out was crazy. And at that point, again, I was like, okay, I'm stuck in this pattern of abusive relationships, bad choices in partners. Like, what is wrong with me? Like, I was just like, this is crazy. And my heart was broken. Like, absolutely broken. And at that point, my parents were like, girl, you got to get back to church.
Get to the church.
Yeah, like, you know better. Like, and I was just like, you're right. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the story, I guess, that leads up to the heartbreak and the part of like, I mean, I had a heartbreak, and then I had another heartbreak, and I was just this like fragmented version of myself. And it just, it brought me to my knees.
Wow.
Yeah, it really did. So, I don't know if that sums it up.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot. So I have a question for you, because I can only like identify with what I've gone through, but based off what I'm hearing, are you a person that when you go into a relationship, you're invested, you're 100% in, you're a giver? Would you say that that's how you identify?
Yes. Yeah. I have always been taught to love hard and to love with everything I have. And so when I got together with my kids' dad, I was also in a broken space, and he was a recovering drug addict.
Wow.
And I saw him as a project. I saw him as somebody that I could fix. I saw somebody that I could, help. And same with this other guy that I ended up with. I was like, you know what? I'm going to teach this guy that he's going to love me, and that no matter what, like whether he wants my kids or like, and I was just like, you get this sense of purpose in these relationships.
Yeah.
And then it just, that doesn't go the way that you planned, right?
Okay, so I heard this the other day, and I'm so curious to know your take on it.
Yeah.
So it said, wait for the right person, but don't wait for a person to be the right person.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, if there's one thing that I could have changed, was my idea that I could change someone.
Wow. Say that again.
Yeah.
That was good.
If there's one thing that I could have changed, it was my belief or my idea that I could change someone. Because you can't. You cannot change somebody. And I learned that the hard way. Like, people have to make their own choices. And if they're not ready to make those choices, there is nothing that you can do to force them to change or be who you want them to be. Or need them to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good. that was like we just got started here, and I was like, whoa, that was like so profound and so deep, right? And I think that is true. And we both share the common faith. We both believe in Jesus. We both love Jesus. And I think that is something that we can kind of like, especially people that care so much, that are lovers, that are givers, that are people that give 100%. We believe that we can change people. And it's like, I can turn this person around. I can be their savior.
Yeah.
But we can't be the savior.
No.
Yeah. Only Jesus can do that. Only God can do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think that, as much as you want to change somebody, or as much as you want to make them fit into this box that you have for them, like, that's honestly one of the most detrimental things in a relationship, is when, you think that you can make them into this version of themselves that you want them to be, or that you see them being. Like, you see someone's potential and you see what they're capable of. Like my ex, like my kids' dad, he, at his core, he is a good person. He genuinely is. And to this day, I still believe that. But sometimes people have just so much trauma and so much hurt in their lives and so much pain that they haven't processed and they haven't dealt with, that there is nothing you can do to change them or to make them see it for themselves. Yeah.
Something one of my mentors told me one day, and unfortunately I didn't really listen to it, but they said, don't pursue potential.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. I know that sometimes, like, it's hard though.
But you can see, and that's the thing. So it's kind of like, oh, that seems like so cruel, because this person, they have so much potential. So build a friendship.
Yes.
Build a friendship. Support them through a friendship, but don't bring the romance, don't bring the emotion into it, because you don't want to date potential, you don't want to marry potential. You want to marry, you want to date that person that is going to fulfill you and bring the best out of you. And so if you want to help that person, be their friend.
Yes, I could not agree more. And that is totally advice that, like, I would give to my children at this point in my life, because I have a 16 and 17-year-old child, and at this point I'm like, I don't know if you guys necessarily need to be dating, but my oldest son, he actually is in a relationship.
Okay.
And, it's one of those things where I don't get asked very often for any type of like dating advice or anything like that from him. But if I were to say that, if I were to say something to him, if I were to, give him some advice, it's exactly that. Don't date potential. Like, you can see
Say it louder for the people in the
right?
back.
Don't date potential. And you want that person that you're going to date to be the person that you're going to marry.
Totally.
And, kind of leading up into my now marriage, this person came to me and I was like, I would not change a single thing about you.
Wow.
Like when me and Garrett started dating, honestly, I didn't have to look at his potential. I could see the man that he had become because of the work that he had done. And I was like, there's something here. And, you know, it's funny because we actually met almost a year before we actually started dating.
Okay.
And at that time...
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because so kind of backing up a little bit, I did end up going back to church after my parents moved back to Red Deer. And I got involved with a youth group. I was not youth group. I was leading youth, and then I was also involved with the young adults group.
Okay.
And I just really focused in on my relationship with Jesus. And to be honest, when I met Garrett, so we met actually on a bus trip that was through a an organized work event. And we ended up sitting together on the bus and we were talking, and, you know, we just had this really good chemistry, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't actually ask me out until the following year.
No way.
And the reason is I learned now that he was going through a marriage breakdown on his side. And he was like, I need to protect you.
Wow.
He wanted to protect me from the fact that he was still navigating remnants of a previous.
That's integrity.
Yeah.
That's honor, right? Because you know, I think a lot of times it's like love bombing, right? The concept of love bombing. You get out of this relationship, or you're like getting out of a relationship. You're like, I just need someone. This person's great, and they're gonna change everything about me, and it's gonna be so wonderful. It's gonna be so good, and then you just love bomb, right? Because you're actually just looking for someone out of your brokenness.
Yeah, exactly. And he protected my heart in that way. And it's something that I will forever thank him for, because when he did come to the table, he was like a whole version of himself. He had done the work. He had done the things that he needed to do. And it gave me time to really, we knew we liked each other when we first met each other. But it wasn't until, you know, almost a year later when, you know, we finally were like, okay, like this is a good time for us and we're gonna pursue this now. So yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, I just want to speak to the young men out there, like put in the work, like become the best version of yourself, whether that's through schooling, whether that's through your career, whether that's through your trade, put in the work and become the man that you need to become to attract the woman that you want to attract. Because if you're not willing to put in the work, you're just going to find potential.
100%. And, you know, it's funny how, like you said, the love bomb thing is like so real. Like, you know, you just kind of get out of one thing and then you're just like, what's next? What? And honestly, I was guilty of that too. Like as a woman, you know, we feel like we have to validate ourselves through these relationships or identify with these relationships, when really the best thing you can do for yourself is to really find your true identity in Jesus and in who you are in Jesus. And then build from there. Yeah. And when God sees that you're doing those things, like, I mean, you don't have to earn it, or you don't have to, there's not like a playbook of like, this is what you need to do. But at the same time, I believe that there's like a favor and a blessing for those people that are doing that work. Yeah. And it's like, you might not be there just yet. You might not have that person just yet. But honestly, my person was like right around the corner. And I was like, oh, like, you know, it catches you by surprise. And I know that sounds very cliche, but it is like when you least expect it, that's when you meet that person.
I think all cliche terms are actually built on a bit of truth.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's interesting because, and I'm so excited to jump into the next part, but the reason like that I had brought it up at the time is when I had met you and I had started getting to know, and you had shared a lot of kind of that story and overcoming, you know, that heartbreak. I was going through similar. I had just gone through relationship. I'm a giver. I'm a person that pours it 110%, you know? And so I was coming through a relationship where I had gave over and over and over and over again. And, you know, it's so interesting. Looking back, you can be like, if I could just get 10% back, I'd be happy. And, you know, that's like such a lie now. You're like, why would I be happy just with 10%, you know? But you give over and over and over again. And then when you just receive that cold shoulder, or you're not getting the same effort back, it's like, it's emotionally draining. It's physically draining. And you're constantly, especially as an overthinker, I'm an overthinker. And so you're constantly asking yourself, why? What could I do better? What is wrong with me? You know, I'm the problem. And you start victimizing yourself because you're like, I'm giving all this. honest. Like, I'm trying to be an amazing boyfriend, an amazing girlfriend, but at the same time, I'm not receiving the same back. And so then I came out of that, and I came out of that relationship extremely broken, because I felt like I had screwed up. I'd messed up. I'd given everything just to have the door slammed in my face. And so I was crying out to God, and I was saying, God, what's wrong with me? What have I done wrong? But instead of pursuing healing, I stuffed it so deep down, and I said, you know what? I'm too broken. I don't want to touch this. I want to lock this down into the depths of my heart, and I never want to revisit this again, and I never want to bring this up again. And so it probably took me about a month. I lost like 15 pounds. Wow. And I was just, I had like no motivation. I wasn't at the point where I didn't want to live, but I was just like, what's the point anymore? What's the point? It was like my first serious relationship, and I lost all motivation, drive, and purpose. And that was really hard, running a company, you know, and it's just, and so, but I never dealt with that. I never fixed that. And so a couple months after this relationship had ended, I met someone else. Okay. And I was like, wow, this person is kind, this person is thoughtful, this person is going out of their way to stay in touch with me. And so I was like, I want to pursue this person. But at the same time, I was kind of like, I was a little love shy. So I was a little love shy, you know, I wasn't very trigger happy, because I was like, I just got wrecked in one relationship. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this one right. I'm going to wait. I'm going to pursue a friendship. I want to get to know this person as a friend and build that friendship, and then move into a relationship. And so I did, spent a lot of time, you know, a lot of phone calls, some in-person visits, dates, you know, trying to get to know who this person is, what she was about. And so then I was like, okay, I want to get, and not just dive, because my first relationship, I just dove in without really getting the opinions of my mentors or my friends. And so like, I dove into this I didn't dive into this relationship. I had her meet the people that I cared about, their opinions, and everyone loved her. My family loved her. Everyone loved her. And so I was kind of like, this is awesome. This is amazing. I'm so excited. And so then finally I asked her to be my girlfriend, and we started this relationship, and I was so excited. I was so thrilled, because I was just kind of like, finally I found a person that puts in the same effort back, that is authentic, that cares, that notices the little things, because life is about the little things. I so care about the little things.
It's true, yeah.
And so I was so excited. Yeah. 13 days went by, and they were like some of the most beautiful 13 days ever, you know, from FaceTime calls and dates. It was beautiful. Yeah. And then on the 13th day, I remember I was on a houseboat trip in the shoe shop in BC. It was the first day. I was so excited. I was gone for a week. I was so excited. And actually I was on the top of the houseboat. There was about like 15 of us, and they're like, you got to tell us about this girl. So I tell the entire story. I'm just talking about the goodness of God, how I brought this person into my life. I'm so excited. And my phone rings, and it's her. And so I was like, oh, you know, we got to talk. But I didn't answer the call, because like I wanted to finish telling our story. Right. And so I finished telling the story. And so then I was like, everyone's like, that's amazing. You know, some of the ladies were crying. They're like, God is so good. And so then I go for a walk on the beach, and I sit on a lawn chair, and I give her a call. And so I'm like leaning back and forth on my lawn chair. And so I'm like, hey, how's it going? And she gets on the phone, and literally like the first words out of her mouth is like, I can't be with you.
Ouch.
I almost fell off the lawn chair. Yeah. And I burst out laughing. Literally burst out laughing. I was just like, I was like, good one. Because she had a sense of humor, right? Yeah. So I thought she was joking. And she's like, why would I joke about that? And I'm just like, oh. And so I just like felt like someone took a shotgun and blew my head off. Like, wow. I'm like so stunned. Because I literally 5 minutes previously had just told our entire story to the people that I get to spend a week with on the houseboat. Oh, man. And now I just get a phone call 13 days after starting this relationship, which I spent months building. Wow. Like intentionally. And it's like, it's over. And I got no explanation. I just was asked for space. I was like, I can give space. And it's like, no, I don't want to talk. I want zero communication. I just need space. Wow. And so I was kind of like, I will give you that space 100%. Like I'll honor that. Can we talk more about it? Yeah. No, I just need space. So I gave the space. Weeks went by, months went by. I reached out. And basically the relationship was over, and I never got an explanation. And to this day, I have no idea why it ended. Like I still sometimes go through my mind as like, what happened? What went wrong? Like my parents. And so it was hard, because it was a chain reaction. Not only did I go through heartbreak, but my friends, my mentors, my parents, everyone was like so shocked, because everyone loved this person. And so, but my gut now was to go to the wrong things, to go to alcohol, to go to partying, to love bomb. Like the urge to just find another relationship to numb the pain was so big. But I was stuck on a houseboat.
Right.
In the middle of the Shuswap Lake.
Probably not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. With 14 Christians and 2 of my mentors. Yeah. And so the next day, I'm literally on the beach, like all alone, just crying out to God. And I'm like, God, I need healing. And God like spoke to me like so clear. And he's just like, what better place for your heart to be broken than in a place that you can't escape my love?
Oh, man.
And I was just like, and then I was just opening my mouth, I just cried. Wow. And so then I went to my mentors, and they literally were shell shocked because they're like, you just, what? Yeah. You just told us this story last night. And so they're praying for me, and I literally just had 7 days of like healing and just chasing God. And that was allowed me to revisit my other relationship and kind of bring up those deep things that I had realized I never found healing in. And so I was able to pursue healing, wholeness, and health on all levels. And it was interesting because talking with one of my friends that hadn't seen me for a while, like a couple months later, they're like, how are you doing? Like, you're going through a lot. And I was like, no, I am healed. And they're like, how? It's been like 2 months. Like, how are you healed? Wow. Like, you just went through like so much. And I said, I ferociously pursued my healing. And I was like, I was meeting weekly with mentors, with my pastors. And I was like, because it's like, I don't want to live with this anymore. So I think a lot of times we have the keys are available to us, but we just choose not to use them.
Oh man. Wow. And I love that you just said you ferociously pursued your healing.
Yeah.
Mic drop. Like, I am telling you, that is a sign right there of strength. And it's like a supernatural strength. It's not of your own strength. And I always say it's not how, it's who.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, like, I love that so much. And I think that, when you are in that place of absolute brokenness, when you're like, I mean, again, I'm going to use a cliche, but it's like at the end of yourself is where life truly begins and healing truly begins and all of those things, because, even wholeness, like you have to come to the end of yourself, because nothing that we do should ever be out of our own strength. And I think sometimes when you're pursuing these relationships out of your own strength and you're trying to like almost force it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like just kind of like, I'll make it work.
Yeah, like, and it's almost like kind of almost coming, and I don't mean this, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, but like coming from a big place of insecurity and feeling like I'm not worthy or I'm not enough. So I'm like, okay, this person likes me. I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to make it, and I'm going to like force it. And I think, and
I will drive, I will go see them. I will pay the bill. I would do all the things just to make this work.
Oh man, I paid this dude's rent. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm serious. Like, and that's the thing. Like and that's, if I can say one thing to the young people out there, to the single people out there, like, don't compromise yourself to try to make somebody love you, because the person who's gonna love you is gonna love you for who you are, and they're gonna love you because of who you are and because of who you've become and because of your confidence that you have that doesn't come from anybody outside of Jesus.
I love this podcast. This is awesome. This is so good. Wow, the depth is just like real. It just like goes to love. That is so good.
Totally.
And young people need to hear that. Like,
they do. Yeah.
Because, I love hearing the picture perfect, relationships. It's inspiring. And that's what I always dreamed about. And then, like, I think that's why I was so devastated when I just went like, oh, like, this is not what it's supposed to look like. This is not what the movies look like. But that's a lie, because I think for 99% of people, they won't have that. And so it's kind of like when society and even the church sometimes puts that pressure, and like, you need to have this perfect life, this perfect, authentic, relationship. And then when you don't have that, it's kind of like, well, who am I now? Well,
we all have stuff. We all have areas of our lives where we fall short.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, I actually, and like, don't come for me, but honestly, I blame Disney for this picture perfect idea of prince meets princess, they fall madly in love, they live happily ever after. Well, no, that doesn't come without an insane amount of work and an insane amount of
preach it.
Seriously, like choosing love every single day.
Yes.
And you have to choose your person. You have to choose. And when you're in that moment, in those moments of waiting, like you have to choose Jesus. You have to choose him. And like, if I could have done a lot of things differently in my life, I would have, you know, looking back now. But if there's something that I can tell you based on the mistakes that I've made in my life is just pursue that relationship with Jesus, continue to grow in who you are. And, but don't look for that picture perfect, because it doesn't exist. It doesn't. It genuinely does not exist. There are so many people who look good on paper, but behind closed doors, they're not. And, you know, I think that sometimes, you know, people look at, you know, relationships, you know, the mentors, people in positions of authority, pastors, things like that. Like, they still have their stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone does. Like, I mean, you look at people like, you know, even like relationship coaches and things like that. How do you think they got to where they are? It's because they've lived it. Like Garrett and I, we did do relationship coaching for a while, and people would look at us and be like, wow, you guys really seem to have it all together. I'm like, no, actually, we just went through this, and this. And they're like, whoa. Yeah. Like, you know, and so, yeah, I think, yeah, just don't look for the Disney version of a relationship, because that's not realistic.
Yeah, I'm going to take what you said and just kind of add a little bit on, because I love it. Don't look for picture perfect. Don't look for picture perfect. Look for real.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much beauty in a real, raw relationship. That's something that even like in my marriage, like Garrett and I, we've been married for 5 years now. And to be honest, like we have had our struggles. Like we've definitely gone through it, and we're probably going to have more struggles. And at the end of the day, you want somebody who isn't going to be perfect. You want somebody who, I mean, there's no such thing as perfect. At the end of the day, that doesn't exist. But you want somebody who's going to accept the broken pieces of you, and who are going to really just be your cheerleader and be the person that's going to just really build you up and encourage you to continue that life on purpose, to continue towards purpose. Yeah. Because if I didn't have my partner in my corner cheering me on, going, babe, like you can do this, you can get your real estate license, you can be the best mom you can be, you can, you know, go out there and do influencing or whatever it is that you do. If I didn't have that person who was cheering me on, despite knowing all of my shortcomings, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I wouldn't be living in the joy and the freedom and the peace and all of the things that come with that. And so that your person is gonna do that for you, because they know that they're not perfect either. So yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And you know, I do believe that not picture perfect, but incredible relationships exist. Yes. But you said something a little earlier that was so key. You said you have to put in the work. Oh yeah. And I'm pursuing someone right now, and she is amazing, and she is incredible, and it's easy. It's so easy, but we both put in an immense amount of work, and I can feel the difference. And, you know, I'm not sure if you know of the author Jeanette Oak, famous Christian author. She's actually from Alberta, Canada. She's written over 100 Christian novels. Amazing woman. And I've had the privilege of having her as one of my mentors for a number of years. And she said something to me. I asked her once, I was just going through heartbreak, and I was like, Jeanette, how do you know when it's like a good relation? How do you know? Yeah. And she said, when it's wrong, you'll be confused. When you're right, you'll know. Wow. And that has stuck with me. Yeah. Ever since. Absolutely. The enemy confuses us. Yeah, absolutely. And so at the end of the day, you know, like when you feel confused, you have to trust that. You have to trust that confusion. Sometimes you can have confusion, but I mean, even coming back to that part of your story where you're like, you were feeling so confused about this girl that you were dating, and all of a sudden she just like hung up the phone and you never heard from her again. Like, chances are she was probably feeling confused about some things, and chances are, I mean, you felt confused after the fact, but at the end of the day, you know, that's for her to figure out. And when she felt confusion, like, you know, and I'm not saying that's necessarily what she felt, but there obviously had to have been some type of doubt planted in her mind for her to say what she did and do what she did. And so, yeah, I think that, you know, just really trusting that. You know, like you just, like there's no confusion. There was no confusion when Garrett asked me to marry him. It was like the easiest yes I ever said, because there was leading to that point, I didn't have a whole lot of doubt. I knew he was my person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say something like for the audience. I think a lot of times it's easy to kind of get caught up in this. So my ex or my previous and this, and you kind of like bashing, and like, that's not what we're doing, right?
No.
Like we're talking about our past, but our experiences. Like I still care deeply about those people because they're humans, right? And they are loved by Jesus. And I still care about their well-being and who they are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is our story, right? And you walk through that. But I just love that we can so authentically talk about our past, but at the same time not be bashing those people in any way.
No, I honestly don't have a negative thing to say about the people from my past who literally made me into who I am today.
Exactly.
Like they're part of your story. They're part of your journey. They're part of the learnings and the growings and the pain and the all of that. Like they're not people to be, talked down about or, like bashed, like you said. Like I think at the end of the day, it's just really about just loving them and, you bless and release and move on.
Yes. Scars are no longer wounds. They're stories.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So good.
Okay. Wow. This is like, we're flying through the time here. But okay. Moving in kind of to the next and the last part of the podcast is choosing purpose through pain. So you are such an inspiring individual, Chelsea, and I would just love to hear, how you took all that pain, all that brokenness, all this woundedness, and turned it into the incredible, beautiful person that you are today.
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I mean, to be honest, I really feel that from a young age, I have been living a life on purpose. Okay. And it stems back to my adoption. I've always known that I was adopted. And I always knew that my mom and dad, like my adopted mom and dad, shout out to you guys, but they always told me that I had a purpose. They always reminded me of my purpose. Even in those darkest moments where I was like, I don't even know what I'm here for. They would be like, you're here on purpose. And when I went through the biggest heartbreaks of my life, I had these beautiful reminders from people who I loved about the fact that there is a call of God on my life and that we are all here on purpose. And so when I was going through the hardest moments of my life, I really felt like God just continued to just like, he continued to just pull at my heart. And it was like, there's a quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's like the thing you want is on the other side of the thing that you don't feel that you are ready to work through. But when you work through that thing, you get the thing that you want. And so for me, it's always been about growth, and it's always been about repositioning or reframing this whole, like, it's happening to me, to it's happening for me, and getting through those moments of heartbreak and getting through those times where you feel at your lowest, to literally just be like, no, like there is a purpose even in this, even in the hard stuff, even in the times where you can't even look at yourself in the mirror. There is purpose in that is eventually going to land you in rooms with people who potentially you're going to be able to help get through those moments. Like, I didn't know what I was doing the night that we sat at Montana's crushing ribs, right? And like, I had no idea, but all I did was share my story and it made an impact.
Huge.
And I think that, there's more where that comes from. For me, there's more of where that comes from for you. And I think for us, we're all just walking each other home. And so, when you are thinking about purpose, there's purpose in everything. And God, I believe, is not even close to done with either one of us. And I believe that there is going to be so much opportunity in the coming days where people are so lost and people are so broken for us to be able to share those stories and for us to be able to really encourage people that, you know what, there is another side to this. There is not just the pain you feel right now. There is more. And our lives will be that testimony of that. And that is why I kept going through those times where I was a single parent, where I had been, broken up with and completely tossed to the curb, where I was questioning myself. I was questioning my worth. I was questioning the things. And I was like, you know what? No, like, I know what God says about me. And I know what I believe and what my parents and people that have, and I think it's also important for us to be good friends too, because friends, encouraging one another, having people lift you up, like those things, like even on the houseboat, you were trapped with those people for 7 days.
I did not want to be with those people, but I was trapped.
Exactly. And you get put in these situations where it's like, okay, like, you sink or swim. And by the grace of God, and by the grace of God only, we swim and we make it to the shore. Yeah. And then we can help other people. Yeah. And it's just this beautiful, beautiful evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. The magic we're looking for is in the work we avoid.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so true. Right. And wow, this has been so deep. I'm like, I'm going to have to re-listen to this podcast to just absorb everything. Yeah. I was like, this is so good. But yeah, finding purpose through pain. And, after the end of my second relationship, I was just like, okay, I need to do something. And I'm either going to choose to run away from healing and wholeness, or I'm going to run to it. And I had to make a choice. Yeah. But I think a lot of times young people equate choice to effort, and they're very different. Right. Because choice and effort are different things. You have to make that choice. I'm going to choose to pursue this healing and wholeness. But just because you made the choice, you're not done. It's not like, okay, we're good. I chose this. It takes an insane amount of effort. And no, it wasn't easy to sit down with your mentors and be like, I screwed up. I did this. I shouldn't have done this in my relationship. This is why I'm so broken. I gave this part of my heart away. And you're digging through these things and the tears are flowing. And especially as like men, it's like, it's hard to bring those emotional things up because it's so ingrained and taught in us that you can't be emotional. You can't express those things. You have to be strong. You have to be tough. And I admit, yes, that is many characteristics that should be displayed in a man. Yeah. But at the same time, you need to find those people you can be vulnerable with and talk about those things. Because at the end of the day, they do affect you. And if you stuff them, you're just going to deal with that pain over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I think that the one other thing I'll just share really quickly is be very selective of who you're sharing those things with.
Yes.
Because I can tell you that if I hadn't had a major shift in my circle at one point in time, I would be divorced. And I honestly think that who you surround yourself with and who you share these very, very intimate things about yourself with, you have to be very selective with who those people are. They can be, people that you trust, people in authority, they can be parents, they can be, but you have to just make sure that if you're seeking out advice, that it's somebody who has been there and who you want to be like. Because if it's not, then you could end up in a very hard situation and making choices that are not the right choices and going through healing in a very different way than what it could look like in a healthy way.
Yeah. In conclusion, I love that. I'm going to wrap it up with a quote that I heard. Tom Brady, my favorite quarterback, after he won his third Super Bowl, I believe it was his third Super Bowl. He was asked by an interviewer, said, Tom, how did you do it? How do you keep doing it? How do you keep winning? How do you do this? And he just said this one line, and it stuck with me ever since. It says, you are a product of the people you surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
And that's what you just shared. And so thank you for your story. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being on the show. And that's what the Kai Paul podcast is about inspiring young people and really anybody that just wants more in life, that want to go deeper and want to deal with things in their life and want to become successful in every single area. So thank you for being here and just sharing who you are.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.